The signs of genuine faithfulness in an avoidant partner are often so subtle and counterintuitive that they can be completely overlooked by partners expecting traditional demonstrations of commitment and loyalty. While securely attached individuals express faithfulness through obvious behaviors like public displays of affection, frequent communication, and clear verbal commitments, avoidants demonstrate their deepest loyalty through behaviors that may appear insignificant or even contradictory to conventional relationship wisdom. The physical intimacy transformation, body language of love. The faithful avoidance relationship with physical intimacy undergoes significant transformation as their nervous system begins associating physical closeness with safety rather than threat, leading to spontaneous, affectionate behaviors that emerge naturally rather than through conscious effort or relationship obligation. The unconscious touching that develops includes them reaching for you automatically during conversations, maintaining physical contact during sleep, or engaging in casual physical affection that feels natural rather than performed. This unconscious touching indicates nervous system bonding that has occurred beneath their conscious defensive strategies. Their cuddling and physical comfort seeking represents major faithfulness indicators through their beginning to initiate or welcome extended physical contact, sleeping closer together, or seeking physical comfort when they're stressed, rather than maintaining their typical physical independence and self-soothing strategies. The public affection comfort level gradually increases with faithful avoidance, becoming willing to engage in appropriate physical affection in public settings, hold hands, or demonstrate physical connection in social situations where their attachment becomes visible to others who know them. Their sexual intimacy approach evolves from purely physical interaction to emotional connection during physical intimacy, with increased eye contact, emotional presence, and vulnerability during sexual experiences that previously remained compartmentalized from emotional connection. The comfort-seeking behaviors that emerge include them beginning to use physical contact for emotional regulation and stress relief, seeking your touch during difficult moments, or automatically moving closer to you when they feel overwhelmed or anxious, rather than withdrawing for individual emotional management. The protective physical behaviors include them unconsciously shielding you from physical discomfort, automatically adjusting environmental conditions for your comfort, or positioning themselves to protect you in potentially threatening situations without conscious decision-making about these protective responses. The sensory bonding that develops involves them becoming attuned to your physical presence, noticing your scent, responding to your voice with visible relaxation, or demonstrating physical comfort and nervous system regulation in your presence that indicates deep biological bonding has occurred. The involuntary emotional leaks when their guard drops unconsciously. True avoidant faithfulness first becomes visible through involuntary emotional expressions that slip past their carefully constructed defensive barriers during unguarded moments. These emotional leaks occur when their genuine feelings become too powerful to suppress completely, creating micro-expressions of care, concern, and affection that they never consciously choose to reveal, but cannot entirely contain when their attachment system is fully activated. The faithful avoidant begins experiencing what can only be described as emotional overflow, where their feelings for their partner become so significant that they breach their typical containment strategies. You might catch them staring at you with unguarded tenderness when they think you're not looking. Notice their voice softening involuntarily when they speak your name, or observe their face lighting up when you enter a room despite their attempts to maintain emotional neutrality. These involuntary expressions are particularly significant because they represent moments when their authentic feelings overpower their defensive programming. Unlike their conscious expressions of care, which they can calibrate and control, these unguarded moments reveal the depth of their actual emotional investment without the filtering and minimization that typically characterizes their emotional expression. The physical manifestations of their emotional overflow include unconscious protective gestures, automatically positioning themselves between you and potential harm, instinctively reaching for you during tense moments, or their body naturally orienting toward you in social situations, even when they're consciously maintaining emotional distance. These protective instincts reveal their unconscious prioritization of your safety and well-being. Their unconscious mirroring behaviors also increase significantly when they're genuinely faithful, with their body language, speech patterns, and even breathing rhythms beginning to synchronize with yours without conscious awareness. This biological attunement indicates nervous system bonding that occurs only when they feel safe enough to allow their defensive barriers to relax naturally. The dream sharing and unconscious processing that faithful avoidants often experience involves them dreaming about you frequently, mentioning you unconsciously in conversations with others, or making decisions that consider your preferences and needs without conscious intention. These unconscious processes reveal how deeply you've penetrated their typically well-defended psychological space. The emotional leak patterns also include their defensive systems failing during stress or vulnerability, where moments of personal crisis cause them to reach for your comfort instinctively before their conscious mind can activate protective strategies. These moments of unconscious seeking represent profound trust in your safety and reliability. The micro-expression authenticity becomes visible through fleeting moments of genuine emotional response that cross their features before being consciously controlled. Brief flashes of joy when you succeed, automatic concern when you're distressed, involuntary pride when others compliment you. These authentic reactions reveal their true emotional investment despite their controlled exterior presentation. The integration indicators you become part of their internal world. True avoidant faithfulness manifests through their beginning to integrate you into their internal decision-making processes, daily routines, and future planning in ways that indicate you have become a permanent fixture in their psychological landscape rather than a temporary relationship experience they're managing from emotional distance. The decision consultation patterns that develop involve them beginning to seek your opinion on matters that affect their individual life, from career choices to living arrangements to major purchases. This consultation represents enormous trust because it requires admitting that your perspective matters to them and that they value your input about their personal decisions. Their routine modification to accommodate your presence and preferences indicates faithful commitment through small but significant changes in their daily patterns, sleep schedules, eating habits, or leisure activities that make space for shared life, rather than maintaining complete individual autonomy that excludes partnership considerations. The future visualization that begins occurring involves them starting to imagine and plan for experiences that include you, making decisions based on long-term relationship assumptions rather than maintaining the temporary mindset that typically characterizes their approach to romantic partnerships. This future thinking represents overcoming their fear of commitment and permanence. Their problem-solving approach begins including relationship impact considerations, where personal challenges are evaluated not just for individual consequences, but for how their decisions and struggles might affect you and your shared life together. This expanded perspective indicates genuine partnership thinking rather than individual survival focus. The internal monologue shifts that occur involve them beginning to think in terms of we rather than I in various life contexts, considering shared goals and mutual benefits rather than exclusively individual interests and self-protection strategies. This cognitive shift indicates deep psychological integration of partnership identity. The identity expansion that takes place includes them beginning to see themselves as part of a couple, considering how their individual choices reflect on both of you, and developing investment in the success of your partnership rather than maintaining complete separation between individual identity and relationship participation. The memory integration process involves them beginning to incorporate relationship experiences into their personal narrative and identity formation, viewing your shared experiences as significant life events rather than temporary romantic episodes that remain separate from their core identity and life story. The protective instinct activation, your well-being, becomes their priority. When an avoidant becomes genuinely faithful, their protective instincts toward their partner become activated in ways that often surprise even them, as they find themselves prioritizing their partner's safety, comfort, and well-being in situations where their typical pattern would be self-protection and emotional distance. This protective instinct represents one of the most reliable indicators of deep avoidant commitment because it requires them to override their fundamental programming that prioritizes individual survival above all else. The faithful avoidant begins demonstrating hypervigilance about their partner's emotional state, physical safety, and general well-being that contradicts their usual pattern of emotional detachment and self-focus. They start noticing details about your mood changes, energy levels, and stress indicators with remarkable accuracy, despite typically being emotionally unavailable or seemingly oblivious to their partner's emotional experience. Their protective behaviors manifest through practical actions that demonstrate care without requiring emotional vulnerability, ensuring you eat regularly when stressed, checking that you arrive safely at destinations, remembering important appointments, and offering support, or taking care of practical matters that reduce your stress without making emotional demands on themselves that feel overwhelming. The crisis response pattern changes dramatically when they become truly faithful, with their typical withdrawal during difficult times being replaced by awkward but genuine attempts to provide support and comfort. While they may still struggle with emotional expression, they begin staying present during your difficult moments rather than fleeing to protect their own emotional equilibrium. Their defensive systems begin, including you, in their protection calculations, where threats to your well-being trigger their defensive responses as if threats to their own safety. This integration of your welfare into their survival programming represents profound psychological inclusion that occurs only when they've developed genuine attachment that overrides their self-preservation instincts. The unconscious caretaking behaviors that emerge include them beginning to anticipate your needs, prepare for your comfort, and make decisions that consider your well-being alongside their own. These behaviors often surprise them as much as they surprise you, representing authentic care that emerges naturally rather than through conscious effort or relationship obligations. The advocacy that develops involves them defending you in social situations, supporting your goals and decisions even when they personally prefer different choices, and prioritizing your reputation and emotional well-being in their interactions with others. This public support represents significant commitment from individuals who typically prioritize their own social standing and personal interests. The resource allocation changes that occur include them beginning to share their time, energy, money, and attention in ways that benefit your well-being and shared life, rather than hoarding these resources for individual use and self-protection. This sharing represents enormous trust and investment from individuals programmed for self-sufficiency. The consistency test, reliability beyond romance. The most reliable indicator of genuine avoidant faithfulness appears through their consistency in non-romantic areas of life, where their actions demonstrate reliability and commitment without the emotional intensity that typically triggers their defensive responses. This consistency across various life domains indicates that their commitment to you has become integrated into their fundamental character rather than remaining compartmentalized as romantic performance. The faithful avoidant begins demonstrating unprecedented reliability in following through on commitments, keeping promises, and maintaining consistent behavior patterns that you can depend upon. This reliability extends beyond romantic gestures to encompass practical matters, social obligations, and daily life responsibilities that affect your shared existence. Their time management begins reflecting your importance in their life through consistent prioritization of shared activities, relationship obligations, and your emotional needs alongside their personal responsibilities. They start treating relationship commitments with the same seriousness they typically reserve for professional or individual obligations that they consider truly important. The communication consistency involves them maintaining regular contact patterns that feel sustainable for their attachment style, while demonstrating respect for your need for connection and information about their whereabouts and activities. This balance indicates their commitment to meeting your needs within their emotional capacity. Their emotional availability becomes more predictable, with faithful avoidance developing recognizable patterns of accessibility and withdrawal that allow you to anticipate their emotional capacity without experiencing their withdrawal as personal rejection. This predictability represents significant emotional maturity and relationship investment. The follow-through reliability extends to their willingness to address relationship issues when they arise, rather than avoiding conflict or difficult conversations indefinitely. While they may still need time and space to process, they demonstrate commitment to resolution rather than permanent avoidance of challenging relationship dynamics. The integration of your needs into their decision-making processes indicates faithfulness through their beginning to consider how their choices affect you before making major life decisions. This consideration represents significant departure from their typical, self-focused decision-making patterns. The practical support consistency involves them maintaining reliable provision of practical help, emotional support, and daily life assistance even during periods when they feel emotionally withdrawn or overwhelmed. This consistency indicates that their commitment operates independently of their emotional availability fluctuations. The vulnerability progression, graduated emotional risk-taking, genuine avoidant faithfulness manifests through graduated increases in emotional vulnerability and self-disclosure that represent calculated risks they take specifically because of their commitment to the relationship and their growing trust in their partner's emotional safety and acceptance of their limitations. The faithful avoidant begins sharing information about their past, their family dynamics, their fears, and their dreams in careful, measured doses that indicate growing trust in your ability to receive their vulnerability without judgment or overwhelming emotional response. This sharing occurs gradually and often during moments when they feel particularly safe and connected. Their emotional expression expands beyond their typical comfort zone, with increasing willingness to verbalize feelings, concerns, and needs that they previously kept private. While their emotional vocabulary may remain limited, their effort to communicate internal experiences represents significant investment in relationship intimacy and connection. The criticism tolerance that develops involves them beginning to receive feedback about their behavior or relationship patterns without immediately becoming defensive or withdrawn. This increased receptivity indicates growing security in your acceptance and their commitment to relationship improvement rather than self-protection at all costs. Their conflict engagement patterns change from complete avoidance to careful participation in resolution discussions, indicating willingness to risk the vulnerability that conflict resolution requires. While they may still need modified approaches to difficult conversations, their participation represents significant faith in relationship stability and safety. The future vulnerability that emerges includes their beginning to express hopes, fears, and dreams about your shared future, indicating that they have begun imagining long-term partnership despite their typical preference for present moment focus that avoids commitment anxiety and relationship pressure. The intimate vulnerability progression involves increasing comfort with physical and emotional closeness that previously triggered their flight responses. This might include sleeping closer together, maintaining eye contact during emotional conversations, or allowing extended physical contact without becoming restless or anxious. The shame sharing that occurs represents the ultimate vulnerability for avoidance, where they begin revealing their deepest insecurities, past mistakes, or areas of personal struggle that they typically keep completely hidden to maintain their image of competence and self-sufficiency. The social integration signals, including you in their world. When avoidants become genuinely faithful, they begin the complex process of integrating their partner into their carefully compartmentalized social and professional worlds. This integration represents enormous trust and commitment because it requires them to risk their reputation, social standing, and professional image by associating themselves publicly with romantic partnership and emotional connection. The social introduction patterns change dramatically when avoidants develop genuine faithfulness, with them beginning to introduce you to friends, colleagues, and family members they had previously kept separate from their romantic life. These introductions often occur gradually and may initially be casual, but they represent significant expansion of their willingness to be seen as part of a couple. Their social media presence may begin reflecting your existence in their life through subtle inclusions in posts, photos, or activities that acknowledge your relationship without overwhelming emotional displays that would feel uncomfortable for their attachment style. Even minimal social media acknowledgement represents major commitment from individuals who typically maintain complete separation between their online presence and romantic relationships. The family integration process involves them beginning to include you in family events, conversations, or decision-making processes that affect their family relationships. This inclusion indicates that they view your relationship as permanent enough to warrant family involvement and investment in getting to know you as a long-term partner. Their friend group dynamics begin accommodating your presence and preferences, with them making social plans that include you or consider your availability and interests. This accommodation represents significant departure from their typical pattern of maintaining independent social lives that don't require coordination with romantic partners. The professional boundary softening may involve them mentioning you in work contexts, including you in work-related social events, or making career decisions that consider your needs and preferences alongside their individual professional goals. This professional integration indicates genuine long-term thinking about shared life planning. The territorial behaviors that emerge include them subtly but consistently communicating your importance to others through body language, verbal acknowledgement, or protective positioning in social situations. These unconscious territorial displays indicate deep bonding that overrides their typical preference for social independence. The reputation linking that occurs involves them beginning to care about how their behavior reflects on you and your relationship, considering your social standing and reputation in their decision-making, rather than maintaining complete focus on their individual image and social positioning. Understanding these faithfulness indicators provides hope and validation for partners of avoidance while offering realistic expectations about how commitment manifests in individuals with different attachment patterns. When avoidants display these behaviors consistently over time, it represents the deepest expression of love and loyalty their attachment style can offer, indicating that they have overcome their fundamental fears about emotional vulnerability to invest their carefully guarded emotional resources in sustaining and protecting your shared connection. The memory investment phenomenon. You live in their mind. When an avoidant becomes truly faithful, one of the most telling signs appears through their remarkable retention and reference to details about your life, preferences, concerns, and experiences. This memory investment represents a dramatic departure from their typical emotional filtering system that usually prevents deep personal information from penetrating their consciousness or being retained for future reference. The faithful avoidant begins demonstrating extraordinary recall of conversations you've had weeks or months earlier, bringing up details about your work stress, family concerns, or personal goals that show they have been mentally processing and storing information about your inner world. This retention indicates that information about you has achieved priority status in their psychological filing system. Their reference patterns include them mentioning your preferences when making decisions, remembering your schedule and important events without reminders, and bringing up topics that matter to you, even when you haven't discussed them recently. This ongoing mental engagement with your life reveals how thoroughly you have penetrated their typically self-focused consciousness. The storytelling evolution involves them beginning to share anecdotes about you with others, including details about your accomplishments, interesting experiences, or admirable qualities in their conversations with friends, family, or colleagues. This sharing represents enormous growth from individuals who typically maintain strict separation between their romantic life and other relationships. Their anniversary and milestone awareness develops as they begin remembering and acknowledging significant dates in your relationship, your personal life, and your shared experiences without prompting or reminders. This date retention indicates that your relationship timeline has become psychologically significant enough to override their typical present moment focus. The preference accommodation that emerges includes them automatically considering your likes, dislikes, and comfort needs when making decisions about food, entertainment, environment, or activities. This automatic consideration shows that your well-being has become integrated into their decision-making process at an unconscious level. The concern tracking that develops involves them monitoring and remembering ongoing situations in your life that cause you stress or happiness, following up on important events, and showing continued interest in the resolution of challenges you're facing. This sustained attention to your emotional world represents profound investment from individuals who typically avoid emotional engagement. The sacrifice patterns, giving up control for connection. The most profound indicator of avoidant faithfulness appears through their willingness to sacrifice some of their cherished autonomy and control for relationship benefits and their partner's well-being. These sacrifices represent the ultimate expression of avoidant love because they require giving up that when an avoidant acts like this, they're truly faithful for real. The signs of genuine faithfulness in an avoidant partner are often so subtle and counterintuitive that they can be completely overlooked by partners expecting traditional demonstrations of commitment and loyalty. While securely attached individuals express faithfulness through obvious behaviors like public displays of affection, frequent communication, and clear verbal commitments, avoidants demonstrate their deepest loyalty through behaviors that may appear insignificant or even contradictory to conventional relationship wisdom. Understanding these subtle indicators requires recognizing that avoidant faithfulness operates through their unique psychological architecture, where true commitment manifests not through emotional intensity, but through consistent behavioral patterns that honor their partner's importance while maintaining their essential autonomy. When an avoidant begins exhibiting these specific behaviors, it signals that they have overcome their deepest fears about emotional vulnerability and have chosen to invest their carefully guarded emotional resources in a way that represents the highest form of commitment their attachment style can offer. These behaviors are so significant precisely because they require avoidance to override their fundamental defensive strategies and risk the kind of emotional exposure that their entire psychological system was designed to prevent. The long-term faithfulness, sustainability patterns, understanding whether avoidant faithfulness behaviors represent temporary accommodation or genuine personality development, requires observing sustainability patterns over extended periods and through various relationship stresses that test their commitment depth and resilience under challenging circumstances. The stress testing involves observing their faithfulness behaviors during periods of external pressure, work stress, family conflict, or personal challenges that typically trigger their self-protection responses and relationship withdrawal. Sustainable faithfulness maintains relationship investment even during difficult periods when maintaining partnership requires additional emotional energy. The growth trajectory indicates genuine faithfulness through continued development of emotional capacity, communication skills, and relationship investment over time, rather than plateau or regression to previous avoidant patterns when initial relationship excitement decreases or when maintaining connection requires sustained effort. The reciprocity balance involves faithful avoidance, learning to maintain appropriate give and take in emotional labor, support provision, and relationship investment, rather than consistently taking more than they provide. This balance indicates mature relationship functioning, rather than temporary accommodation that cannot be sustained long term. The autonomy integration represents sustainable faithfulness through their ability to maintain relationship investment while preserving appropriate individual identity and independence, rather than losing themselves in relationship obligations that eventually become unsustainable and trigger withdrawal patterns. The conflict resilience demonstrates faithful avoidant commitment through their increasing capacity to work through relationship challenges, rather than using conflicts as justification for departure or emotional withdrawal that damages relationship trust and intimacy over time. The future orientation that develops involves them beginning to make long-term decisions that include relationship considerations and demonstrate genuine investment in shared future, rather than maintaining complete individual focus that suggests relationship impermanence and temporary accommodation. The habit integration that occurs includes them incorporating relationship considerations into their daily routines, automatic thinking patterns, and life planning in ways that indicate your partnership has become fundamental to their identity and life structure, rather than remaining an addition to their individual existence. Understanding these faithfulness indicators provides hope and validation for partners of avoidance, while offering realistic expectations about how commitment manifests in individuals with different attachment patterns and emotional processing capacities. When avoidants display these behaviors consistently over time and across various life stresses, it represents the deepest expression of love and loyalty their attachment style can offer, indicating that they have overcome their fundamental fears about emotional vulnerability to invest their carefully guarded emotional resources in sustaining and protecting your shared connection, despite the significant psychological risk this represents for their attachment system and self-protection mechanisms.